You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. My co-host here is Brad Hunt, and today's podcast is with Thor Tingey, owner of Alpacka Rafts. It's a great show if you're interested in getting a raft, and we highly recommend them. We can't imagine doing especially spring hunts and some August fall hunts without the rafts. They have been a game changer. And we sit down with Thor. I sit down with him. We have a conversation. We talk about the rafts. Some of the questions I had about rafts more recently, we kind of dive into that a little bit. It's a great show. If you're interested, you'll want to catch this one. They do have rafts that are on demand, and they have, I believe, some kind of payment plans too, because I think some of the rafts are $800 to $1,200 in that range. If you use the code GRITTY, you're going to save. You're going to get a discount, and it helps us as well. So if you're interested, this is the show for you. There are options in getting them. They used to have a 2 to 6 week lead time. And so if you wanted one for bear hunt in a week or so, you can still get one because now they have an actual inventory of on-demand, in stock. You just have to choose from what's available. Yep. But we kind of get into the rafts that we commonly use, the various sizes, sort of, the different uses, the different, we talk about the cargo flies, the self-bailing options, some of that kind of stuff. And then we've done a podcast in the past as well with Thor. You can just go and do a little search, Gritty and Alpacka Rafts, and you should that podcast should pop up in your and you could go back and listen to that one as well to get a little more detail on the rafts. But highly recommend Alpacka Rafts for your adventure. Like I said, it's kind of hard to beat. So
absolutely.
Hope you enjoy this one. If you just watched the bear hunt that I published on Sunday, you're going to see Brad, you're going to see actually Hunter and Mark almost drown in the rafts. And so we have a little spiel at the end talking about, at the end of the film, talking about how the rafts can be used and leveraged. It's
just some tips and pointers that will help you on your way.
Yeah. And in their defense, these rafts definitely were leaking a bit, especially Ryan's had 55 patches on it over the years.
We have put them through the paces.
Yeah, they're old. They're way older than they should be and still be in use, given what we do to them. And they're made out of different materials. So Ryan's raft is 5 pounds. Mine was 7 pounds. Mine has a thick material it's made out of. Ryan's has a super thin, paper thin material. His, after years of testing, gets it gets quite a few holes here and there just from use. But they're quick and easy to patch. And for a lot of what we do, just jetting across a river, it's more than plenty, and it's only 5 pounds. I carry 2 extra pounds that I don't really need to carry. So I now have the same model, which is the Caribou. We pretty much use that almost for 80% of our hunts.
Yeah, by far the top 2 that we always use are the Caribou and the Mule.
Yeah. And I think the Caribou is so maneuverable. It's so handy.
Yeah, for bear and deer, I think the Caribou is perfect. Now, if you have some elk or anything bigger, I would recommend a bigger raft.
Or if you're doing a long float.
Yeah.
If you're doing a long float to leave an area, then perhaps the Mule or even the Hunter is more ideal. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget, if you want to check out the films that we have a bear playlist on our Gritty channel right now. If you go to Brian Call Gritty, you'll see the bear podcasts, all the bear podcasts we've done and all the bear films we've created that are public facing. Go to that playlist. Go to the Gritty YouTube page. You'll find the playlist there, and a great resource. We even have like 3 years of gear dumps, so you can go back and look at our spring backpack dump and what we use for our hunts and kind of get ready for your own bear hunt. Hopefully you're able to get out and get after it here in a few weeks like we are. We're looking forward to it. Thanks for tuning in, and stay gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and my guest today is Thor Tingey.
Tingey, that's it. Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
Alpacka Rafts, and you are out down in you're in Colorado, right?
Yeah, southwest Colorado, right in the corner, halfway in between Durango and Cortez, little town called Mancos.
Mancos, yes. And I wanted to get you on the podcast. Right now is the time for guys that are getting ready to spring bear hunt, which is a lot of our audience, to get their hands on a pack raft before the season starts if they're going to try to use one this year. And I got to tell you, Thor, I don't think we have done a bear hunt in 5 years where we haven't used a pack raft.
I love it. I love it.
It's kind of a staple at this point with spring melt and the runoff in the mountains. Even if we don't use it to float the bear out of the canyon, we use it to cross the rivers, because almost every mountain range has a river cutting up it,
and then you can get where you need to go. It's, literally not hunting related, but I had a guy last weekend grab one because he was going in to ski one of the big peaks in the Weminuche, and he had to get across the Animas. Wow. Big, huge, one-day monster mission. I'm like, I have no interest in doing that anymore. But he was psyched, and they're like, yeah, we need the raft because we got to get across the river.
Yep. I got to tell you, so the raft was brilliant this year. We did a moose hunt in Alaska, Ryan Lampers and I, and we went into near the Arctic Circle. We went pretty far north, and when we were getting ready to go, we were going with a resident from Alaska who's a good friend of ours, and he was saying, "Hey, Brian, you don't need a raft. We already have the big rafts, the big pontoon boats and stuff." He's like, "But you don't need. I don't know what to use a pack raft for." And I was looking at maps, and I was doing some e-scouting, and I'm thinking, there's not a place not to use it. I mean, there's water everywhere. And so we brought a caribou, and we brought, what's the other one we brought, Brad? Did you
bring a mule?
No, it was the Ranger.
Ranger's sweet.
It's about 10 pounds, right?
It's a lot bigger than a caribou.
Yes.
A lot of capacity in the Ranger. So
with the Ranger, I brought the Ranger and the caribou, and we ended up using both a lot. And in one of the videos, you can see us floating down a canal. There were these big lakes back there in the middle of nowhere, and out of those lakes would be these slow moving canals that are about 5 or 6 feet wide.
Oh, I know. I know them well. Not those specific ones, but I know Alaska interior, that whole show.
So we ended up throwing the moose in there and ferrying it out in, it was about 700-800 yards to the main river. It saved, I couldn't believe it, man. It was a lifesaver. We were only 30 yards or something from the canal. So we plop in there, and it was amazing. Yep. So that was perfect for the caribou.
Well, it's funny because I'll admit, I don't. Some people really get into the YouTube thing, get sucked, go down the rabbit hole, got to watch all the videos. I occasionally do, but I think it was 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, I somehow ended up on it, and those videos popped up, and I was like, and I watched the whole thing, and I was like, Emily, our marketing person, I'm like, these guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing. This is awesome.
It was great. I mean, after that one, we had to cross rivers a few times, and it gave us a chance to use them both. But toward the end, the pontoon boat and the what is it? The D boat, the big old giant raft that was rated for 4,000 pounds. The NRS.
You just had a big NRS standard raft, and maybe a cat is the pontoon boat.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cat raft and a full raft.
We ended up with 2 moose and 8 caribou, and we were running out of space, and so
I believe it.
And the water was going down quick. You're in a race against. We were there pretty darn late compared to most of the people who had been there had gone home 2 weeks before that. So we were out there hunting when most people are too smart to be there. So we ended up needing to offload a lot of weight. Thankfully, having the Ranger, I took 4 caribou. Well, it was it was definitely 2 full caribou in the pontoons and the gear inside the pontoons. And she was riding low, I'll tell you. She was riding a little low. Little water was coming in over the sides, but that Ranger floated it, and I floated about 30 miles.
That's pretty awesome.
That way.
Hey, hold on 1 second.
Yeah,
my dog is requesting a bathroom break, so I'm going to open the door for her, and then she'll come back in when she's ready. There we go.
So that was a lifesaver, and I was really impressed with that Ranger and what it took.
Yeah.
And then we took the caribou and we lashed it into in between the pontoons on the cat.
Yep.
There. And then we added,
just kind of like towed it.
Yeah, it was kind of tucked in between the two, right up next to the seat in the back. And the concern was, when you back up, when you drove forward, what will happen, right? But the pontoons, the frame was sinking into the water and then dragging, and we needed it to be higher.
A little bit higher.
Yeah, so we ended up putting a bunch of moose quarters in that caribou, which offloaded about 250 pounds from the main raft, and then boom, it was up out of the water. Everything up. And we had just the capacity we needed between those 2 pack rafts helping out to get it done.
2 moose and 8 caribou is a sizable quantity of game.
We didn't expect to have that level of success. We were under. We should have had 3 more average size rafts and then use the pack rafts for all that auxiliary travel that we did.
Yeah.
2 of the caribou that we shot, 4 of the caribou actually, 4 of them. We floated down a little tributary.
Yep.
Saved us 3 miles of hiking.
Yeah, and that adds up. And that ground is spongy, difficult to move. Another thing you can do, which I don't know if you guys did on those trips, but I've done before, is if you take your big raft down, you set up a camp, but then you're like, you get up in Glass, and you're like, oh wait, they're 2 miles back upstream. Can't drag the big raft upstream.
Nope. Just hike.
Go up, you get them. Do everything. Oh, we'll just walk down, grab a pack raft, come back up, and then
that's exactly
run right back to the boat.
Like where we were seeing these moose and these caribou, we wouldn't have shot them there if we didn't have pack rafts, because it would have taken us the next 3 or 4 days to get them packed out. But because we had the rafts, all we had to do was just put them on our back. We had a 5-pound raft and a 10-pound raft, and we hiked up to the pinch point where these caribou were migrating through. We shot them right there, and we only had to ferry the 4 caribou 500 yards to the river and then float out 3 miles.
That is so nice.
So it just one of the things that we ran into though was my caribou was overloaded because I had 2 full caribou in there, the hides, the horns, my gear, everything else, plus my own body, right? So it's not really built for that load. So I put on, I had waders on and Crocs, and I just threw it all in there, and then I held onto the back of it and floated, just float. So I wasn't actually in the raft. I was just hanging on the end of it. And
I've got great. A good friend of mine from Alaska is really dedicated bow hunter. And he took a forager, which is the next size up from the Ranger.
Yeah.
And shot a moose with a bow and was like, shoot, we got to get this thing out of here. And they were up in the headwaters of a system, and that went down to a lake, and they had access from the lake with like a regular sea kayak. They could get there. They'd had that brought in, but they couldn't get that all the way up into where they got this moose. So they got the moose. And they were same thing. They're like, man, we can load the whole moose into the forager, but we're going to be starting to push weight, and the stream's pretty shallow. So they just used it basically like walking a dog and tied a leash to it.
Yep.
and just walk down the river, which was not more than knee deep really anywhere, but they were able to drag all 1,000 pounds of moose
One trip.
out in one load, loaded up the forager. They got down to the lake, and then they, rather than paddling the forager, they hooked up the sea kayak and then towed it across the lake, and they got picked up over there.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just so versatile. That's the same thing that we did. We loaded it up, and Ryan was running the Ranger, and I was using the Caribou, so he could sit inside the raft with both his Caribou loaded up, and he was able to float down. I just hung on the back. I just put my arms over the back end and just kicked my legs, and where I could, I stood up and just let it walk. Where it was knee deep, but for the most part, there was just a couple stretches like that where it was braided out, and then the rest of it, I just floated.
Just cruisy.
And it was nice, man. And we always could fall back. And it turns out that basically both moose and all the caribou, except for like 3 of the 8, we used the rafts to significantly cut down our
logistics
days of packing.
And
it was nice. It's nice just to have it as a backup too. We even got into this one area where it was a series of lakes that went on for miles. And we actually went back there for a day, and there was moose sign everywhere. And we felt really empowered back there, because if we shot a moose, you float across this river. And then, or this lake, big old lake, giant lake. And then you get to the other side and you walk like 30 yards and you put in another lake, and you float all the way across that. And then you ferry the meat another 30 yards to the main river. And it was like, I can't think of anybody that would ever try to kill a moose. They just see it and they try to call it in. If it wouldn't come, they just be like, oh, well, can't shoot him. And so we were
carrying a moose a mile is in that terrain.
1,000 yards.
Yeah, like
all day.
Your first load, you're like, we got a moose. This is awesome. And then you're like, what did we do? Why did we do this?
Exactly.
Whose idea was this?
Now,
you do that once.
Yeah, it was 600 yards, roughly 550 or something. That was our farthest haul, which was over a swampy tundra, and it took us. It took 3 guys about 3.5, 4 hours to ferry the whole animal, just 500-600 yards. So if you had to double that distance, I would assume it would take you 8 hours. 1,000 yards is 8 hours. A full day for 3
at least
guys.
And you're going to be even more tired because of the
distance and all of that. So it's been absolutely incredible. One thing I noticed, because I've been using the mule for so long, and I got my hands on the caribou, I didn't realize how much thinner the caribou material is than the mule. It's quite a bit.
It's considerably lighter.
It still holds up. I mean, we put it through hell and gone. Ryan's has a lot more holes than my mule does, doing all the same kind of trips. But with a little Tyvek tape and stuff and patching when we get back, or even on the trip, it was all manageable. We were able to fix, everything.
Yeah, for sure. The caribou is really your kind of lightweight specialist. You're making compromises when you go down to that boat. They may be worth it, but there are compromises. Then the mule is kind of your, in between kind of jack of all trades kind of option. And then when you jump up to the Ranger and the Forager, especially because now the Ranger we make in the heavier material that we make the Forager out of. So it's a heavier, bigger boat, but it'll hold up, season after season to a lot more abuse. But for backpacking, if what you're doing, Ranger's sweet for that, because you're going in, you already got the big raft. It's it's your side trip thing versus where you're trying to make that call as you're doing a situation where you're maybe like, we're gonna hike in 10-15 miles. It's in a river basin, so we know we could get out.
Yep.
Once we get an animal down up there. But do I really want to add double the weight of the boat in my pack for one trip?
Right. That's where, the caribou and the mule I'm really split on, because having used that caribou, first of all, it handles pretty sweet. I like how it feels. There's no deck space. I mean, it's pretty tiny, but it's only 5 pounds.
Yeah, you're in it,
Thor. It's just 5 pounds.
Yeah.
And so for bear and deer, we're kind of set on the caribou. It's that blend, especially for bear season where it's spring and you're usually using it to cross rivers, not necessarily to float.
It's more of an access tool than a float or meat out tool.
Yeah. But when it gets into mule deer season and it's later or it's fall, that mule is better than the caribou, I think. It's worth the extra 2 pounds for the bigger size, a little more capacity, thicker material.
Just a more robust all around boat.
Mm-hmm. So I like having both. The Ranger, again, that's pretty ideal for what we did in Alaska at this point, seeing what it could do. I was really surprised. I mean, I basically loaded that whole thing, the whole pontoon system with meat. And I was like, okay, is there any room for air? Like where are we getting, what's going to happen here? And that sucker did awesome, and it held the air. It was tough material. So
I think I've not tried it. I know plenty of people that have successfully moved an entire moose carcass with the forager, and I think the Ranger's just going to be a little bit under that threshold. Like, might have a tough time getting a whole moose out in a Ranger, but anything short of that, it's going to be sweet.
Yeah, I think the Ranger's a little,
and
I think you're right. It's just not quite enough for a moose, because a moose, we estimate, it's 4 caribou is our estimate, at least.
Yeah, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, moose is a gigantic animal.
You need that.
But the thing is with moose hunting,
for the head too.
Yeah, there's not a lot of times moose hunting. If you're sheep hunting or you're deer hunting, you might do some of those things solo. There's not many solo moose hunters out there.
And I would say
because even when you kill one, you're not one person dealing with a moose is a mess.
Well, and I would say this, like, what really matters with when it comes to that, the reason I want a lightweight boat when I'm hunting mountains for mule deer or for spring bear is because we're going up stuff that's vertical and we're going deep into some nasty terrain. I got to carry that boat with me, right? But in moose country, it's flat. We're accessing it by boat or plane or something, or even something.
Yep.
And so I don't mind carrying, a 10-pound raft instead of a 7 or a 5, because
100%.
I'm not doing this, and I'm not bringing 12 days of food into this remote expedition area. I might bring 12 days, but it's coming in on some kind of UTV or something. When you're moose hunting, generally, that's how it goes. So you're okay with bringing a bigger boat. In fact, we've been talking to Emily. We're trying to get the biggest, the forager, all dialed, because we have moose again in August, and we're looking at where we're headed.
Perfect. You'll like that boat,
and it just looks like the right boat for that job.
You'll be, you're pretty familiar with all the boats, but you'll be even more surprised at how the ridiculous amount of weight that a forager will hold.
It's going to be nice, because we've been on the really under, the tiny side. I mean, caribou is probably what we pick 8 out of 10 times. And we sacrifice whatever comforts a little bit heavier raft might provide for that lightweight option.
Yeah.
And
so you guys got another Alaska trip coming up?
Yes, in August we're going to a new place. It's pretty remote. It's a lot different than what we did before, but it's just myself and Ryan. And this time, again, it's to do-it-yourself moose in the middle of nowhere, and it's gonna.
Are you gonna be floating a main river with side things, or like base camping and stuff?
We're gonna be hiking a lot through some mountains, and then there's gonna be connected. There's massive lakes throughout the region, and then there's rivers here and there that will float. And we have the option of floating all the way out or getting picked up by an aircraft. We're still kind of figuring that out. Depends where we see the moose, and how it all shakes out. But it's going to be a pretty intense do-it-yourself adventure. I'm looking forward to it. But after weighing the
that'll
pros
be
and
awesome.
cons, like I said, it's kind of flat, right? Like, and we're getting dropped. So the big old forager is the way to go. Ideal.
You'll love that. Yeah, that'll work out good for you.
One of the things that I have gone over now, because I've had rafts now for years and I've been using them pretty heavy. And one of the things that I've run into is the cargo's fly on my mule, which is now going on 5 years of heavy use. It's got to be replaced because the air is just coming out of it kind of everywhere. It's not just the zipper; it's just everywhere. And you mentioned a couple years ago that with a cargo fly, that just over time, that's what happens.
Yeah, like the most meticulous care possible can maybe give you 5 to 10 years of life, out of a cargo fly, and like more what I call normal use, normal wear and tear you should fit in that sort of 3 to 5 year range. And then we have people that don't take care of their gear, they make a mistake and leave the boat rolled up wet in a warm environment, and it'll blow apart. Without trying to get too technical, so the cargo fly zipper is only coated with urethane on the outside. So when you see the inside, it's just a fabric feature. And then there are different styles of urethane, polyester, polyether, like yada, yada, yada. The urethane that's used in the cargo fly zipper, unfortunately, is not of the same grade as the urethane that's used on the boat coatings. And that, combined with the fact that it's not coated on the other side, so moisture can get into that back of the zipper and then kind of like create this kind of warm, high humidity environment. That's what leads to those little micro cracks all over the zipper that cause it to lose air. As you probably noticed, it's frustrating. It's definitely, you need to have it replaced. But the nice thing is that in most cases, you'd see it before you've gotten out on a big trip. And even still, the boat will still float. It just is a little soft. You have to pump it up a bunch more, and then it kind of gets worse and worse to the point where you're like, okay, I got to get.
It never was a catastrophic failure at all. It just was a slow leak, and
that's how they've been. And so every few years, depending on how hard you use them and what happens, they need to be replaced. And we kind of do that on a subsidized level for people. I think we charge like $100, which is, I don't even think that covers all of our costs. But the goal is keep people with good to use boats. And realistically, what we kind of tell people is once you've been through by the time you're approaching your third cargo fly, you're probably starting to approach the end of the useful life of the boat. Sometimes the boat's still in really good shape. And what we'll do for those customers is say, hey, we've replaced this 3 times. We're running out of real estate to do the replacement. Let's go ahead and just cover this up. Boat is perfectly still usable as a non-cargo fly boat. We'll give you a discount or get you into start from scratch again.
Yeah. I thought about it as a guy who does a lot of rugged hunts in crazy places. And you have that concern about any failure point on any piece of equipment. Right? And so for a while there, I was kicking around, well, how could I get the pack raft, but without the cargo fly so that I wouldn't have that point of failure? But I just keep going back to the efficiency of storing a whole caribou inside the raft and then floating down multiple bulls in that raft. I just don't. And so far in all these years, it actually hasn't failed me yet. Therefore, I keep going back to, man, as long as I'm taking care before I leave,
it's extraordinarily rare to have like a catastrophic style failure that causes someone to, essentially, have to abandon a trip. It's far more of like, this is just kind of not working as well as it used to, and I need to get it replaced. And that part is really good. But I'm with you there. For us as the company that's making the boats with these things in them, it's the ultimate love-hate relationship. It's the thing that makes the boats that much more capable to do the adventures and that we want to and intend them for. But it's also this weak point in terms of longevity and other stuff that will drive you crazy. And we try to educate people. I won't say that we do a great job, but we try to educate people on taking care of it. When you get your boat, the maintenance kit is like zip tied to the zipper. Right. Like we want you to see it. We want you to read it. And I swear, like even, guys that are my friends that should know better. Like I went and paddled the Salt 10 days ago with some guys who are really good boaters, have been testers with us for a long time. And I got to the end of the trip and took back the prototype boats that we were using. And I'm looking at their cargo flies and they're just like dirty and dry. And I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. I will say that's kind of how I handled my first raft, which was the Mule. I didn't take care of it at all. And our other flies on my other boats, I got 3. Ryan has 2. A couple buddies have 2. My Mule is the only one that is a problem. And that was lots of abuse and use and no care in the beginning. Because I couldn't be bothered to read the instructions, and
most of us are. I mean, my wife is always like, have you read the instructions on that? I'm like, why would I need to do that? I'll figure it out on the fly.
Well, and I got so much sand in it too, because I wasn't careful. And when I did goop it up and then I got all the sand there, and there were so many ways. Now I'm savvy. We're good with all of that. And hence our other boats haven't had these issues, zipper issues. So definitely taking care of it is going to help. But it's one of those things where, it's just worth the cost, dealing with the hassle. It's worth it because wow, what you can do if it has a cargo fly versus not there. It's unbelievable. The difference.
It's absolutely true. And, for anybody that wants, every boat that we make is available, not necessarily standard, but through our custom lab without a cargo fly. And there are people that are just like, I don't want to deal with it. Totally fine. No judgment there. Get it. But as you point out, it is a limitation in what the boat can hold.
I mean, if I wasn't packing out wild game, if I didn't need, I could see how I could make do on deck with some of the boats. But gosh, no, it's impossible when you start packing deer and elk and like you have to have that space. You can't put it all on deck. There's no room.
And also, as you probably know, that stuff's heavy, you put the weight high, boat gets so much more tippy and squirrely. When you put it down in it, it's like a tank.
Yep, absolutely. So that brings me to the next question for you. I wanted to run by you. My Ranger is self-bailing. So, it was bogged down. I mean, I overloaded that thing. It had so much meat in it, and I'm floating down the river and water splash in and it just kind of goes out. It was fine. And you don't have to dump it out where our other rafts, when they take on water and they're full of meat and then we got to pull over and then we got to dump the water out. It's like,
it's hard.
And some spots it's every 50 yards. It feels like we have to get out and dump it. When the water is a certain level and all of that. So, I wanted to ask you, because self-bailing, it's almost bomb-proof. but it's cold, and I didn't like having the water come in and me be kind of, and I was floating 30 miles and I had waders on and all that, but I sat there going, man, I wonder if a cargo fly here without a self-bailing bottom could get me what I want, and stay warmer.
Yeah, I mean, we have always sold more self-bailers to warm weather locations. So certainly anytime you're going into the tropics, our customers in New Zealand, Australia, and they love self-bailers because it's nice. Cool water's coming in, feels great. Alaska has always been a tough market for self-bailers because, as you've experienced, it's cold. Or spring bear, you got runoff. Man, that stuff is cold. And, to your point, when you're doing those kind of like spring bear hunts where you're not doing a big long float, you're using it for access. Well, you don't want to get wet at all. You want to get into your dry boat, paddle across the river, get out of your dry boat. So in those circumstances, the non-self bailers are warmer and drier. And we actually offer spray decks, but that adds weight and bulk and stuff that's kind of complicated, especially in a hunting environment. And in our custom lab, we actually offer, like, you can get a mule with a self bailer and a spray deck. So then splashes coming over the side don't go into the boat, but any water that does get in there will drain out the bottom. They're okay. But I'm personally much more a fan of just either picking a self bailer or, a plain boat, maybe with a deck for, I paddle with a deck for all my whitewater stuff, not hunting related. But if I'm going hunting or if I'm going fishing, I usually pick a self bailer, but it would depend on the trip where I have access to different boats. Fishing, I'm almost always in a self bailer because I'm always wearing waders because I'm not leaving the river. Yeah. Hunting, if I'm moose hunting and it's marshy and that kind of thing, I'd probably take a bailer because I'm probably going to be wearing waders anyway for a lot of moose hunts. But caribou hunts, even especially sheep hunts or something like that, where I'm going to be up in the dry, I might not take a self bailer sometimes because, man, I want to be a little bit warmer. But as you point out, you got to know the river you're on or what water you're on. Going out those little sloughs, the dry boat is great, but you get in those classic Alaska shingle gravel bar riffles, and they just dump water into the boat all day.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's where the bailer is nice. But I do really recommend waders are fantastic. And, there's this old theory or, urban myth or rural myth, backcountry myth that, if you fall in the water with waders, they're going to cause you to sink and die. And it's just really not true. You'll get very, very wet and uncomfortable, but short of buying 1960s rubber waders with a 75-inch chest on them, but your modern breathable wader is perfectly fine to go under, especially if you wear a jacket over the outside of it. And that's what I do a lot of my trips on in Alaska, where the conditions are always wet and kind of miserable. So that'll really make those bailer boats a lot warmer, because if you don't have like something waterproof on your bottom, like butt's going to get soaked, back is going to get soaked, and then you're going to be cold.
Yeah.
I have spent more than the average person time being nearly hypothermic from sitting in a bucket of ice water in a Backraft.
Well, I did use the dry suit that I bought from you guys.
Sweet.
But I made a mistake not bringing it to Alaska because I didn't plan on using it to draft 30 miles, 40 miles. I planned to use it just for those little trips, And so I hadn't really considered the need to. I was like, I'll be floating in that big raft, and just using the little rafts for their uses. Yep. But it turned out, no, I ended up using for half of the float that caribou loaded down heavy. And I'm like, man, for like 1.5 pounds or whatever it is, I could have brought the dry suit.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
And just happy as a pig in mud.
Yeah, and we now have one a Kokatat suit that has a soft neck on it, so it's a lot more comfortable. It's not a fully immersion dry, but like, I mean, it's pretty. Unless you actually go swimming, you're going to stay fully dry in that thing. And I keep
the neck is a problem. Like,
it's so uncomfortable, that terrible latex on your neck.
Yeah, a bunch of guys said to cut it.
So it fits a little better.
So it fits. They said you just keep cutting it, keep cutting it, keep cutting it until it fits and still stays snug.
Yeah.
I hadn't done it. In fact, I used it just with up to my chest. I didn't put the headpiece over, just so it was more like a gaiter almost, or a wader, I should say.
2 trips to Alaska ago, I went down to paddle a hard whitewater river called 6 Mile Creek with a friend, and he was like, "Oh, we can borrow my dry suit." And I was like, "Okay, that's great." And he's like, "Oh," we got there, and he has a brand new dry suit and this beater old dry suit, and he was like, "You take the brand new one." And I'm like, no, I could take your beater suit. I don't, I'm borrowing it. And he's like, no, you don't want my old smelly dry suit. Well, we did what he didn't tell me. We figured out after the fact. He custom orders his dry suit with a small neck gasket. And so like, I'm like almost asphyxiating. So every time we go through a rapid, I'm having to like pull open the gasket to get a couple of breaths and get some blood back to the brain, and then go back to it. So no, I'm with you. I like the soft necks for all those kind of adventures. I wear them for fishing. I wear them for hunting.
I'm gonna have to check that out, Thor, because that was one of the things I had brought it up on a show, and a bunch of audience members said, "Brian, you need to cut that neck so that it fits." And they said, just look at a little video and see what it says. How to do it.
Yeah. But we've got a suit called the Supernova now, which is got a soft neck on it, and that's really nice. I think the market's small, but I've thought for years that there is a real market for the kind of Alaska backcountry hunter for a hunting caliber semi-dry suit for these kinds of hunts. Like make it in the right kind of muted colors that you can moose hunt, caribou hunt with, because you don't need like full stealth camo to hunt moose. Like
that looks a lot more comfortable around the neck.
Yeah. But if you got that in the right color and had like the right zip setup on it, so that, I'm like, man, that's the suit. And then if I would like neoprene feet because they're a little bit warmer, and then I could wear like a lightweight wading boot with a good sole on it, so I could hike and hunt with it. Like for me, that is the dream backcountry Alaska suit. And then that would be my Northwest winter steelhead suit, because you could go out in the most miserable winter kind of sleety day and just stay warm the whole day. Oh, you got to dip your arms into the water to deal with a fish. So you got wrist gaskets. It's fantastic.
Yep. Yeah. I brought it on a number of trips so far. I put it on to cross when it was pouring rain and it was just cold and wet, and just get right in and you're warm and dry with the suit, hiked with it a little bit. My only complaint was how tight it was around the neck. So I might have to look at this
Supernova soft neck.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So you're saying probably not. The skirt probably isn't ideal.
I don't think it's ideal for hunting. No. Okay. I would choose to go with rather than bringing 2 pounds worth of extra stuff in terms of a spray deck and the combing and the skirt. I'd bring the 2 pound dry suit and do it that way in a hunting environment. Yeah. If I'm doing an adventure trip, I'm bringing the deck.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about boats. I've already said, the Caribou is the super lightweight. It's been, we've proven that we can hike. We floated 25 miles with bears in the pontoons and our 12 days of expedition gear and everything. We hiked in with them and we floated out with them with dead bears. We've done the same thing in the Caribou for mule deer. I kind of like for later when it's colder and wetter, like in October, November, before the water freezes. I kind of prefer, I think if I'm going to float great distances, I'd rather have the mule. Now, in all these cases, we have dry boats. We don't have any, we've never used a self-bailing system.
Yep.
And it has been a little bit of a problem because you got to get out and dump it.
Yep.
But not that big a deal. And we pretty much put our rain gear on and just hop in. Sometimes I'll put on neoprene booties and take off my boots so my boots can stay dry. I'll throw them in the pontoon so they're just guaranteed dry. Sometimes I've stripped down naked from the waist down and just throw on some rain pants and just go. And I've been miserably cold, like hypothermic when I get done. But
I'm familiar.
it's a weight thing. I'm trying to manage, what I get out of it versus the cost of carrying it around the whole time. So that's been our experience. So we've kicked around the mule and the caribou for a lot of that expedition stuff. We're getting ready to use the forager. I'm excited about that to see how that performs with big old moose and some rugged country. I've used the Ranger, but I've never used a whitewater version of your rafts. And let me think. What else do you have in the lineup for hunting that might fit a niche that I didn't cover?
So if you're like the guy that just went over and skied this big peak, did the Animus thing, if you're looking at just paint the picture of this type of hunter, maybe you've got a spot where maybe it's a mule deer spot, maybe it's a bear spot or it's an elk spot, and you're really not moving. You're not intending to move to go paddle down the river a ways or move meat. You just need to get across or just little access point things. Like the Scout is even smaller than the caribou, like 3.5 pounds, super compact. And there are situations where the Scout is going to be the totally correct boat for that specific hunt. I would only say that if you're not planning on doing all these other hunts like what you do, because it's going to be too limiting for all those. You're going to have a very hard time, if you get a Scout, it's not going to have a cargo fly. So if you go across a river, go climb up a mountain, shoot a bear and come back down, you're going to take a couple of trips getting back across the river. But maybe that's 10 miles back in there or 5 miles back in there. That extra, you're trying to cut weight everywhere. Scout's a pretty cool little option for that. And you might be a person that has like one specific hunt you want to do, and the rest of the time you're like, I might go up Mountain Lake, do some fishing, hang out. Scout's a great little boat for that. So that's
crossed my mind for some of those lakes where the moose are, because it's not whitewater, it's not rugged. You're just steady, soft floating.
It's just a very little boat in terms of excess capacity. You're gonna have a hard time putting much weight in it to come back. So that's the limitation on the Scout. On the whitewater end of the spectrum, there are most hunters that I know are not whitewater kayakers, like get excited about paddling class 4. But I do actually have a few friends that are dedicated hardcore bow hunters that are also class 5 whitewater kayakers.
Nice.
And for those rare people that are kind of that special breed, I mean, everybody knows, that runs that kind of hard whitewater. You can't put, an elk or 2 caribou in your boat and expect to run class 4 safely. That boat's going to be too heavy and scary. But if you're a class 4 or 5 paddler, you could definitely run class 3 loaded up with meat, depending, being safe. And I'll give an example of my I grew up in Alaska in 2009. My dad was still living there, so I was able to draw a party sheep tag with him and hunt with him, so I didn't need a guide. We do a pretty cool tag. And we hiked in 26 miles into the Alaska range and got into rams back there and had a river to float out that we didn't know what it was. All I had was Google Earth footage, and I knew there was a canyon. I didn't know how much whitewater was in there, but we ended up getting a ram, and a great hunt, super fun to hunt with Dad. And we went and paddled out, and we ended up in like pretty solid, easy class 3 for quite a bit of that canyon. So it was definitely putting some whitewater skills to the test. But we ended up, I think it took us 2 days to hike in 26 miles. And I think we made it back to the car in 5 hours, which was pretty amazing because the river was moving. Super cool trip. But where I'm going with that is open caribou, kind of sketchy on that trip. Like, as you know, you're going to fill it with water and be dumping it all the time, cold. Forager and ranger are going to be awesome. Big self bailers, they can handle that whitewater super well, but you got a 11 pound boat minimum, and you're pushing 14 with the forager. That adds up when you're packing back in there. So we actually have a boat called the Nar Mule. So our whitewater lineup, like the most popular boat in that lineup, is called the Narwhal, and it's a really stable, forgiving, good for intermediate level whitewater paddlers boat. And we've offered through our custom lab for years, and this is the first year we've offered it standard, where people were saying, hey, I want the Mule, but I want it with all the Narwhal whitewater fixings, the thigh straps, back band, stuff like that. So that's what the Nar Mule is. So you can get a Nar Mule, and now you already know the Mule and what it can do, but now you've got the Mule that's been souped up with all this whitewater fixings. Totally useless, extra weight, completely unnecessary for any of your kind of, like your moose caribou hunt in Alaska, just riffles. You do not need a whitewater boat for that. But if you're like, hey, I know where there's rams deep in the Alaska range, and it's a class 3 river, and I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go back in there. Nar Mule is a sweet boat for that.
You got me intrigued because I'm looking at it now. So it's right, 8.9 pounds. And that includes the self bailer.
Yep.
And because that boat right there, there's some of these spring bear hunts that we're doing, they're class 3. You're getting in there where we've decided at times to just portage around them because the caribou just is too.
It's not built for that.
No, and there's been a few times where we've sort of pushed it, and you can get sucked into one of those little eddies, and the water just comes over the top and wants to swamp that thing in seconds, and there's nowhere for the water to go. It just starts to go under, and it's strong water because all that snow melt is intense, and it can change in a day, just with 2 hot days, and it's wild. So something like this, we've been talking about something like that for those whitewater spring hunts.
So that's where that's a more of a niche boat, but I can see a wheels turning in your head. You're like, oh, I know where I'd use this.
Yep. Yeah. Because the caribou the mule handled better, but again, the I could see where just a little bit more weight and
having the thigh straps and the back band and the Nar Mule, it gives you a lot more control over where the boat's going. And if you know how to paddle, like you've kayaked before, then it's even more like, oh yeah, like we can make things happen on this.
Okay. Yeah, because I have noticed that with Ryan and the caribou and myself and the mule, a lot of times his caribou is quite nimble. Like he's able to like hit some stuff where mine's a little more sluggish,
Yep, for sure. Oh, by the time you get up to the ranger and the forager, you better have your decision of where you're going and be executing that decision well before it becomes critical.
Well, a lot of times because Ryan has more paddle experience.
Yeah.
Guiding out of Kamchatka, Russia, and doing a lot of some whitewater stuff. So he typically picks the line, and I kind of follow him. But the caribou isn't. The mule isn't quite. He makes that decision, and he makes that. And sometimes it's late because you can't quite see, what you're looking at till you're right there. And then he hauls his booty over, and mine definitely, he paddles better too. And so it takes me a little bit, but usually I follow just enough distance that I can get there just in time.
Oh yeah. It's funny because that happens in whitewater paddling all the time. I went to a school about 5 years ago, really top level whitewater paddling school, learned a lot there. And the instructor's just world-class paddler, beautiful paddler. I remember we were doing this drop, and it was blind. It was this big pour over. He couldn't really see. And instructor was like, okay, you're going to paddle up the edge and you're going to look for this little rock and you're going to point your boat right at the rock. And then as you go, you'll kind of see this move where you just kind of like, it's the line's called airplane, and you just kind of do this banking turn and then go over it and go over this big boil at the bottom. And so he goes over and casually takes 3 smooth strokes and explodes off the thing and disappears.
Yeah.
And this guy, Adrian, comes down and he paddles over there and he tries to replicate exactly what he did.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. And he doesn't even make it halfway across the pool, falls over sideways, gets beat down, almost swims, you know? And so the next day we're at the same drop, and the instructor goes, hey, Adrian, if it takes me 3 strokes to get up to do this move, how many strokes should you do? Adrian looks at him like, trick question 3. He's like, 12 paddle strokes.
Yeah, that's how Ryan makes fun of me the same way. You know, he's much more efficient. But in my defense, his boat was a lot lighter and
I get
more nimble too. But even then, he's very good at efficiently using that paddle. It's a skill.
Oh yeah,
it's a skill.
Yeah,
well,
you watch a world-class paddler and you're just like, what? How can they do that? That's not fair.
He'll go upstream too, or he'll use the boat he'll point it in directions I didn't think about pointing it to cross.
And just ferry over and around.
Yeah, and I'm like, so I've learned a lot from Ryan, watching him and learning, and I've enjoyed it. But this gnarmule looks like, for some of our late season bear. So one of the things we had planned this year is, because we wanted to use some bigger boats, better whitewater type. Like, we weren't thinking the gnarmule, but we were thinking the Ranger maybe.
Yep.
Just because bigger boat, little safer on this whitewater exit.
Yeah, Ranger's ideal for that, for sure.
But it was a lot heavier, right? So we decided, okay, well, what we might do is 2 to 3 weeks prior to the hunt date, we'll carry all the boats in and about 7 to 10 days of food on the llamas, hoist it all up in the trees, and then hike our 30 miles back with the llamas, hit our other units where we're going to hit different states. And then, because our problem always is we can't go in with animals that late because they can't make it across the streams. They can on the way in, but by the time the snow melts on the way out, they can't. The animals are stranded. So we could use the animals to carry that load in and come right back out. Then we're just on our own feet to get back there. And then we got 10 or 14 days to hunt, and our boats are already there. And who cares if it was 10 pounds? Who cares if it was 14 pounds? The llamas carried them in. So
that's a good program. I like that.
So we're kicking that around, and that might be a strategy, because we keep having to cut hunts short when the hunting is at its prime, because we got to get the livestock out. And we've also cut them short because we're getting a little worried about the river, because we got to float it out in a caribou, because we hiked it in without livestock, so that we could, and we didn't want to carry 25 miles in. We don't want to carry a 10-pound boat. We carried a 5, but it ends up being that we got to leave sooner than we wanted to, because we feel like the boat is a little underpowered for the river we're on. So it's all fun though. The logistics are what make it exciting.
Totally.
Make it kind of the planning phase is as fun as the hunt, I swear, Thor.
Oh, always.
So, do you guys have, it says, you guys have lead times. It says click here for current lead time. I'm on your website.
We're actually doing, better this year. I mean, everything, we had, 3 years of fire hose demand, like the rest of the outdoor and the hunting industry. And then, that kind of like has slowed down this year. We're looking at a really good water year this year. So still feeling good about things, but it's allowed us to catch up. So we're pushing 2 to 4 weeks right now for what we call our build to order boats. The vast majority of our boats are built to order, just like at a restaurant, cooked to order. So that allows us to offer larger number of options. But this year we started, we just released them at the end earlier this month, a bunch of what we're calling RTS, or ready to ship models, where we consolidated down a few of to kind of some of our more popular models. And there are caribous in there, there are mules in there, there are no rangers, but there are foragers.
Okay.
So because people are always,
last minute.
Previous years, we always got, even I'm a last minute planner time, like, oh, I didn't get this done. And, and then you find out, oh, Alpacka's got a 6-week lead time. That's not going to work. So I got to find something else that's going to work. And so now it's like, well, you might not get exactly the color you want or exactly the boat you want, but you can get a boat that'll work for what you're planning on doing.
I see that. So you got a list here. You just go to alpaccaraft.com, click on ready to ship, and that list will be there. But if a guy is going to go hunt May 1st, he could get one in now, and he could have it before the hunt.
You should have it before then. You're starting to push that though, like, because 4 weeks, it might be, a lot of boats are leaving in 2, but it, it can be a random thing of like, oh, well, that material we're a little behind on. And so it's pushing 4, and in 4 weeks we're at April 20th. And, that's tight. You're barely getting your boat before your trip. So
yeah, some guys, they're going out May 10th, May 15th.
Yeah.
Some are hunting into June.
Perfect time. Like, my view is like, our lead times are 2 to 4 weeks. If you're ordering 5 to 6 weeks before your trip, you're golden. You'll get your boat in plenty of time. We'll be able to take care of you. If you're kind of in that 3 weeks till my trip, we'll probably get it done. That's we try to accommodate people. So let us know. I've got a trip in 3 weeks. Okay, we'll push that through. And if your trip's in 10 days, then look at those ready to ship boats.
Yep. Dude, all right. Well, it looks cool. It looks like you have quite a few in those ready to ship boats section, which is pretty ideal. I mean, it's hard for me to for a lot of what our guys are doing for April, May. It's hard to beat the caribou. It really is. And
those ready to ship boats, they're we're offering expedited turnaround. We live in the Amazon world, so it's we're trying to turn them around to get them. If you order one today, it'll ship the next business day, and it'll ship 2-day air.
Gotcha. Nice.
So you can order one on Tuesday, and you'll have it by Friday.
That's sweet. And this mule is looking good too, because the mule, that's the other one I'd recommend. If a guy isn't quite that skilled on the water, hasn't done a lot of rafting, and he's going to bear hunt, deer hunt, I would say the extra couple of pounds on the mule, a longer lasting boat, a little heavier duty, a little easier to feel safe in. That's a really hard one to beat as well. That's what I've been using for years. Yeah,
open mule with a cargo fly is going to be just perfect for a ton of stuff. And you might be like, you might get it and for a specific hunt, and then find, oh, I've got tons more activities I can do, and it's relaxing and it's nice to fish out of, or it's a good duck hunting boat, actually.
That's what we have found is it's once we owned one, I can't imagine life without an Alpacka Raft at this point. We use them constantly. They just pop into our head for every trip. Yep. Well, could we use it? Oh yeah, we could. And it just given us work. I really feel like it set us up for success in a way that other guys haven't tapped into yet. So
it just lets you poke around the margins and find, those like access, like those little spots that are just kind of like a little bit convoluted.
Yep. And when you guys have, it does say that I see on your site you have a pay in 4 interest-free installments, so people can do that using Shop Pay.
Yep.
So that's another great thing for somebody, probably. Like if they want to, if $1,000 for the boat's a little much, they could break that into $250 a month, and they go ahead and get that now when the season is now, because it's on us already. So cool. Well, Thor, anything you want to throw in there? Anything I should mention before we close out? I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
I think this is our 3rd time. It's been great fun, and I was psyched to see those videos. I was like, oh man, these are awesome. I want to get up there. I got to do this.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm hoping we get a lot more a lot more adventures in the boats this year. We have them booked. So we'll see how they turn out every year. Like I said, they're kind of a staple for us at this point, especially for bear. It's impossible. And for moose, it's going to, you got to have a pack raft. In fact, we made believers out of those Alaskans. They were like, because they had mentioned, don't bring them. And
you don't need them.
Yeah, you don't need them. And then once we had them, they're like, sign me up. I'm never going without one again.
That worked pretty good.
For a 5-10 pound penalty to just have it as a spare. It's hard. So.
Oh, and Alaskans are a funny group. They're stuck in their ways in a good way, but sometimes it's like they're like, "What is this new contraption?"
Yes,
it's an iPhone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on. I'm going to let you go, folks. Check out Alpacka Rafts, alpackaraft.com. Thank you for tuning in, and stay gritty.